All right, welcome again to Social Distillation, the submarine still of the internet, where we attempt to drop the beat and pour white lightning straight down to your brain. What are we talking about today, Sebo?
It is a Wheel of Time episode, and we are going to continue with Demandred because we forgot some things last time, and we are going to contrast that with Lanfear, which refer back to our Lanfear and borderline personality disorder episode if you want the full version of just her. But we're going to
Hmm.
contrast the two, and Lanfear's, yeah, go to that episode. Demandred is a little bit different, and I was thinking about this after our last episode on Demandred. Is he is the embodiment of envy, right? But it's a very masculine envy because he challenges the person he's envious of,
Exactly.
not punches down. Yeah.
And that is what sparked this. We keep saying we're going to do other things, and we keep having thoughts because that's why we love the Wheel of Time. We keep having things of, we could explore this idea. And um,
Well, yeah, and if you're new to the show, as we're in the first couple minutes here, and you're probably going to hit no on it, we explore real life topics through fiction in
mhm.
these episodes. And yeah, stick around if you want to get a little bit of a profile of these two characters and actually maybe think about people in your own life that you might be dealing with, or I like to do self-reflection. If I see a bad guy in a book, I like to say, do I have those traits?
Exactly. Well, you know what? That's a great segue into my point on. I went looking back through the Q&A database, and um oh, I'm on the wrong one there. I went back through the Q&A database on Theoryland, and I had done so with Demandred last time we talked Demandred, and I was looking back through for anything for today because, as you mentioned last time, we didn't even get to the psychology of him. And there is an interesting tidbit here from CompuServe, which, if you're old enough to remember that, remember to schedule your prostate exam. Um, uh, so from 1996, um, and here's this interesting tidbit about Demandred in particular, but the Forsaken in general as well. And there are a couple of these, the idea of what it means to be evil, and there's a biggie that I'm going to go with on the Lanfear side, and um and uh to your point, um I can't remember he's like a philosophy and ethics professor at Yale or Harvard.
Bogosian. Oh no,
Bogosian.
yeah, well, no, he was Portland State, and
No,
now he's University of Austin.
so no, there was a Harvard or Yale guy, and I've heard Shapiro and a couple other people mention this,
Mm.
who was known for opening a class with who would have stood up to the
Oh yeah,
Nazis, who
yeah.
would have been an abolitionist. No, you're not. You're lying to yourself. Put your hand down. Because history shows that the overwhelming majority of you would not have. And if you're talking like a freshman level class, you could have 100 people in a big lecture hall,
Hmm.
and you can do the math pretty easily. It was, in the single digits of percent of people who actually, especially once they gained power, especially once the reign of terror started, that actually stood up to the Third Reich and suffered the consequences of it.
Yeah, and a lot of people like to, I mean, even just talking with people on a daily basis, they're like, oh, well, they were forced to do it. It's like, no, if everybody was forced to do it, nobody would have done it because you need somebody to enforce that.
Mm-hmm.
So,
Exactly. Exactly. So the point being, this is why good villains are so good. Both lowercase g and capital G, they can be capital G good because they can show us, hey, how did that person get there? How did Darth Vader become Darth Vader? How did Demandred become Demandred?
mhm.
Right? Those are important things to know because no, you're not going to invade Poland and the Low Countries, but you might be a terror to your family and your friends.
Hmm.
You might be a
Or
tyrant.
yeah, a tyrant, a terror, a burden, anything, you know.
Tyrant is a word Peterson uses a lot when he talks about these negative traits because, again, no, you're not invading a country, but you are invading the mental health of the people around you, and you are a burden to them, and you are oppressive to them. All right, so somebody asked, is there any particular inspiration for the Forsaken and the other antagonists in your series as there are for the women characters? Demandred and how he was always an inch behind Lews Therin in the power, in swordsmanship, etc., for example, was there a particular inspiration for that? Robert Jordan. Well, there are, and I won't go into details because I want to keep the mythological and legendary roots hidden. I don't want to have people spending more time discussing the legends than the stories. The thing is, there are several legends and myths based on such jealousy.
Mm-hmm.
On the man who is just half a step short of another man, the woman who would have been the greatest of her age, but there was another who was just a bit better. That sort of jealousy leads to the worst kind of hatred. When someone can easily defeat you, there's not that kind of jealousy. But when he beats you in a photo finish every single time, that is when emotions begin to curdle and rancor sets in, and you find yourself with this festering deep inside that can turn into murderous hatred. Jealousy. That's why I pulled this one out, because that is such a simple, ordinary word that we all experience, that we
Mm-hmm.
all have, and
Well,
can lead to
a-
terrible, as he says, murderous hatred.
and Jordan was so good with how he named people and the tropes he played on, like you said, putting tropes on their head.
Mm-hmm.
Demandred is jealous of Lews Therin. Lews Therin, he out of Jordan's own mouth, was a play on Lucifer, who was jealous of God. And so it was actually a little putting it on its head that there was somebody right there jealous of Lucifer.
And the overall kind of meta point for today that sparked the thought of contrasting with Lanfear is, um people are people,
Mm-hmm.
but we are different and categories are different. So what kind of sparked this is when we were going fishing a couple weekends ago, I said, hey, is Machiavellian behavior, it seems to me that that would be more feminine because it's manipulation. And your answer was basically it's how you manipulate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So what Machiavelli was saying to the prince, as he titled his book, was how you manipulate, wield, hold power.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so he was talking to and from a masculine point of view. Women, when they can do those things, but they do them differently,
Mm-hmm.
and
Well, because they
and
have different skill sets.
they have different,
I mean,
exactly.
yeah. Well, I mean, let's get us canceled here in the first few minutes of this. We're bigger and stronger, and we use that.
Mm-hmm.
Women are better socially and in reputation damage, and they use that. Sometimes that's a good thing because sometimes the man needs to put his foot down, and sometimes the woman needs to guide the men to the right direction. You used good and evil earlier. The behavior isn't good or evil. It's how you do it and when you do it, and what your motivation is behind it.
Mm.
And Lanfear was jealous of Ilyana. She was very possessive of Lews Therin, but she also just wasn't a good person. She was willing to me first. And actually,
Mm-hmm.
when we look at good and evil, a lot of times it's me first. And it's antisocial behavior is what it is.
Yeah, I want to reset this because I mentioned this back in our Lanfear episode, but it's important to remember because for a long time after Fires of Heaven, when Rand sees the past visions, and you see the name Myron and go, wait a minute, wasn't that Lanfear? Wasn't that her
Mm-hmm.
original name? And she was part of the research team that drilled the bore. And so it created this long running theory that she was forced to turn to the shadow. And Jordan eventually answered this question, and this is from 2005, that And I'll skip the parts about Bidamon. Um, as an aside, for those who think that Lanfear was in some way twisted against her will by being involved in drilling the bore, I have heard that theory advanced. Of all those involved in the project, she was the only major figure to go over to the Shadow. She was ripe for the Shadow's plucking
Mm-hmm.
long before the bore was drilled.
Mm-hmm. Well, and
And in
we
the
talked
same
about
way,
this with our devil at the crossroads kind of thing.
yes,
The devil can show up at the crossroads, but you still have to reach out and shake his hand.
in the same way, we don't know as much about Demandred, but you would assume Demandred would be in that same boat because how
Mm-hmm.
many people of the 100 companions that Lews Therin took with him on the at the strike at Shalgol, how many of them were in the same situation Demandred was? Because that was the 100 most powerful male channelers on the
Mm-hmm.
light. How many of those people were also, right behind Lews Therin, or maybe right behind Demandred, right? So they're
Mm-hmm.
always third or fourth because it's always either Lews Therin or Demandred. But they didn't go over to the Shadow. I mean, you've got 100 very powerful men who, you know what? I'm I'm not the dragon, but that's okay because I'm still me. I still have ability. I still have power, and I'm going to do my part.
Yeah,
So
I
say
can
the
give a
same
real
about
life
Demandred.
example of that. Watch old documentary videos of Arnold Schwarzenegger
Mm,
in the gym. Look who he's working out with. All his competition. He was asked recently, "Do you have a trainer or do you train yourself?" And he said, "No, I have training partners." And all his training partners were the people he was competing against.
hmm
And they didn't hold back. They tried to make each other better the whole time.
Well, there's some great videos of him and Lou Ferrigno, and you're like, how are they not breaking the equipment,
Yeah,
man?
yeah, especially because Lou Ferrigno was always that just a step short. If Arnold didn't exist, Lou Ferrigno would be six-time Mr. Olympia.
Hmm
Yeah.
Yeah. Um, and that's where that hierarchy versus coalition comes into play. Of can you slot yourself into that hierarchy, even if it's not in the position you would like, and be a happy and content human being, or is that going to, uh, as 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 Jordan said in that earlier uh, post about jealousy, is that going to create murderous hatred?
Mhm.
Whether or not you actually act on that, you can still have that feeling of intense
Well,
hatred for
someone's
someone.
going to die from that feeling. If you have that feeling of intense hatred and you don't act on it, you're going to die. It will tear you down from the inside out.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. So,
Disclaimer: I am not condoning acting out on it. I am condoning getting mental health treatment for it. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes, which is the okay, well that leads me to another point I wanted to make here about the contrasting, and I'm glad the door is shut, or you would see a stuffed animal come flying at my head because my wife gets annoyed when I use her as an example. But uh frustrated, having a rough day, rough week, and texting my wife because that's where I get my mental health. And she says to me, "You need affirmations." And I had to resist the urge to say, "No, that's not how men work." And I figure out how to explain it in a way that wasn't super autistic. But it occurred to me, hey, wait a minute. Yeah, this was kind of where we started with men's health, talking about how do you, I use the example of, someone asking with girls, it's relatively easy. You buy us some flowers, you buy us some chocolate, you get us just someone some girls just like a card because it shows you're thinking about them. But what do you do for guys? Guys don't like that stuff. And the response was, just make sure they know you appreciate them.
Hmm.
Okay, appreciation is different from an affirmation. Okay,
Uh-oh. Heath just froze. Hold on. I'm going to pause
supposed
until
to
he comes.
be a joke.
Okay, you froze for a second, so repeat that last sentence.
Stuart Smalley, the character
Yes,
from
yes.
old school
I'm good
SNL.
enough. I'm smart enough. And gosh darn it, people
This
like
guy
me.
looking at this, as we would say now, beta soy boy looking in the mirror, telling himself he's good enough, and gosh darn it, people like him.
Hmm.
You couldn't do that now because people wouldn't get the joke. They would say, well, yeah, you are, buddy. And we have shown the meme of the difference between guys and girls. Am I fat? No, you're a queen, you're a princess, you're great. Dude, I know four morbidly obese people and you're five of them, bro.
Yeah.
That's so the only time I have ever heard those kinds of affirmations, heard a firsthand example of where something like that worked was when it was tough love, like putting up post-it notes of get off your ass, do something. But for a guy, the only time I've ever heard that kind of thing working is if it was tough love, if it was
Mm,
tough love for yourself. Whereas with girls, with women, no, you need those affirmations both from yourself and from others. That doesn't work for guys. We don't need an affirmation. We need appreciation. And there's a difference there.
hmm
And
Well, we need the nudge, but it's
mm,
different than an affirmation.
mhm.
You know, you need to express the need for you to do the thing, but then you also need the, oh, you did the thing. Good job, guy. And then a blowjob, and we're good.
And this is where credit where it's due, because I this just dawned on me when I was thinking about this contrast and thinking about Lanfear. She was one of the better actors in the whole series.
hmm
Her and Ishi
Natasha O'Keefe, yeah,
by far were great. But it also
and
occurred to me,
Leandrin.
and Leandrid, uh, there was some good writing, some surprisingly good writing there, because much like I praise Leandrin saying, going full evil and saying, don't feel sorry for me. My only regret is that I didn't let that, bastard drown my baby when he wanted to,
hmm
because all he did was hold me back. And I was like, ooh, that's shocking. You actually let her be evil. Well, they actually let Lanfear
Well,
be a femme fatale.
I think they accidentally did that with
I
Leandrin
I
because
think,
that
yeah.
was an abortion point. That was an abortion point. Why abortion is so important for us. It made her
uh,
evil, but at the same time, it was actually making a point they didn't think was evil. But
that's fair. But okay, so Lanfear as a femme fatale, now granted, they turned it up to 11 and it was much more subtle in the books of what she is doing, okay? But this is why that kind of femininity is becomes toxic, because you're using the appreciation and then you're saying but,
hmm,
okay? It is, yes, honey, I appreciate you. Let me wrap my arms around you. Let me, love on you. But wouldn't it be better if you did this?
hmm.
Don't you think you would be even more if you would, do this, or treat this person that way? And
Yeah,
that's what she's doing.
that goes back to your Machiavellianism, right?
Hmm.
Because she is using the thing she knows she has, the strength she has, which is his affection and his need for that appreciation to get her way for her
She is
own
absolutely
purposes,
using
not for the
her.
good of him, not for the good of
Mhm.
them. In a relationship, that's the difference. It's for the good of them, not the good of me.
In the books, she's using her sensuality. In the show, because they're obsessed with it, she is straight up using sex as a weapon. Remember the scene in the one of the few
Well,
actually good scenes in the third season, where they're in the dream world and she's hopping on top of Rand and she looks straight at Egwene because
mhm.
she knows she's there, and she knows what seeing this is going to do to Egwene, and also do to Rand, do to them. And she is using that as a weapon.
Well, for good reason, sex and sensuality are very heavily linked, right? I think that's actually one of the problems with the world today is through porn or whatever, we've stopped associating the two.
Yeah.
And, I'm as liberal about social things as anybody could be, but when they're together, it's the best thing ever. When they're not, it's kind of I mean, it feels good at the time, but it's a waste of time.
Right. Which was one of our rants about it. We weren't just being prudish when in the very first episode, Rand and Egwene are already jumping each other in the frickin',
Mhm.
common room of the inn. It's like, let's get it on.
Yeah, it took
Where the
it
hell's
took
the
the meaning of it
romance?
out. Yeah.
Yeah,
Stick the
where
meaning of it out.
this is supposed to be puppy love. This is supposed to be your first love. There was never love. There was never romance, which means the on again, off again, will they, won't they kind of drama there. There's no there there. There's no drama because there's no romance.
Well, and this is something Jordan Peterson has talked about a lot, is the way the dating scene is now, it's creating basically sexual psychopaths. Because when you do it so many times without that meaning behind it, you start to lose sight of the meaning. And so it's just another nut, basically. It's
Mm-hmm.
just get through the night, another nut, see you later, never, email me.
Yeah. And as the reason the reason it works so well in the books, Lanfear and what she's doing is, so I found this fun little tidbit in the Q&A. Someone had asked about Lanfear down on the docks in Karheen at the end of Fires of Heaven. She climbs up onto the wagon, and someone had asked, "What's that all about?" Well, Jordan's answer was, quote, Rand was occupying her to the extent that she couldn't afford to just use flows of air to bring it, the angriel that she uses, to her. And Lanfear being Lanfear, there was a touch of the dramatic in it. She was always a drama queen.
Mm-hmm. Well, and so was Demandred, to keep this all in one
Mm-hmm.
little circle. He was the masculine version of a drama queen. He was grandiose. He was look at me, look at me, look at me. Because the more he was using that, he was projecting that out there to be, look at me, I'm the best, when there was somebody better. And
Which is
well,
why
watch
we.
UFC. Look at the weigh-ins nowadays.
Mm,
One of my problems with the UFC nowadays is they're so WWE. Nobody can like just do a face off at the weigh-ins anymore without some drama. And I'm just like, come on, like save it
don't
for
they
the
have a
fucking fight.
partnership now? Don't they have a like cross promotional partnership or something now? I thought I heard Oy
Oh,
vey.
I haven't heard that. And yeah,
Ugh.
yeah.
I think it was,
No, no, all credit to Dana White. He's
yeah,
done good work, and I love what he did during COVID with Fight Island and everything. And as a former mixed martial artist, I appreciate the sport, but it has become, well, I remember this from my fighting days because I had a coach that would always be in my ear and he would be saying things that were supposed to piss me off before the match. And he was just
yeah,
like,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
he was like, oh, he's breaking into your house and he's going to rape your wife. And I was just looked at, I was, Adam, how about I just hate losing?
yeah.
He's actually a good guy. I met him at the weigh-ins. We've got a bet, and whoever loses buys the beer. And it's just, how about I just hate losing? Isn't that enough for me? And the UFC has gotten past that. It's just
Hmm.
now it's, oh, well, these guys hate each other, and you're like, no, they actually don't even really know each other.
It's you're feeding the Demandred personality because
Mm-hmm.
Demandred could not or would not, you know, shake the hand and say, "Well played. I'll get you next time."
Mm-hmm.
It was, I hate you. I despise you. It should be me. A-
That was
a-
my first win in Mexico, though. The guy, I broke his arm, and he comes up to me after the fight, and he's like, "I want a rematch." I'm like, dude, rack up some wins, I guess, and you can have one. But yeah, you're in a sling, dude.
mhm, mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. That is why last time when we were talking about Demandred, that is why we were so um I think our frustration with how the Demandred story went, I think that's probably the one element that goes beyond a nitpick. Most of our complaints about Jordan, we had bigger complaints about Sanderson with the
Hmm.
caveat of we understand this was an impossible job. Thank you for actually giving us an ending. But we had some more serious complaints there with his style and his take on things. Most of our complaints about Eye of the World through Knife of Dreams could be categorized as a nitpick, except for Demandred. I
Well,
think we needed some more nuggets along the way
hmm
because, to your point about what that does to the male psyche when you let that fester, and to Jordan's point there in that answer to the question of murderous hatred is when he finally does show up and you see the drama king and the way he is peacocking around, yeah, that makes sense. But it's not satisfying because we didn't have those little tidbits along the way to have some setup for that payoff.
Well, and this is where the actual base of the story got in the way
Hmm.
because realistically, if you look at the whole series, then this is Jordan through Sanderson, the whole thing, it's Lews Therin versus Ishamael, and then we have Ishamael come back as Moradin, and it's Rand versus Moradin.
Hmm.
And it's realistically, there are other players in the Forsaken, but that is the main plot line going through. But you have a character in Demandred that is a rival. And so you end up with a storyline that has two rivals. And it's to play him out the way we wanted, you would have taken away from the Ishii Moradin
Yes. And there's
rant.
there's actually I just realized there's a great example of this. So I can't remember what it was, but I was going down a rabbit hole on Wheel of Time videos and I happened to watch some random video about Wheel of Time, and it was talking about the series as a whole, and it talked about the slog, which I hadn't heard until Isomorphic or Scott. I don't remember who used the term, but
Scott,
apparently
I think Scott. Yeah.
apparently that is a term used by the fan base. But when we were talking about it, we were just talking about the Perrin storyline was a slog.
Mm-hmm.
Apparently, there's a lot of the fan base that considers kind of the whole, not the whole, but the of Crown of Swords, Path of Daggers, Winter's Heart, and Crossroads of Twilight, all four of those books, the whole set of four to be a slog.
Mm.
I really disagree with that because, especially, I think Winter's Heart is one of the better books in the whole series, for one. But two, it just dawned on me that there is actually a great protagonist antagonist bit there because we the reader see Moradin, but before we know or think we know who he is, that he is Ishamael returned, and before he shows up more prominently, starting with him showing up in Shadar Logoth at the end of A Crown of Swords, where Rand meets him. Rand's antagonist is Samael,
Mm-hmm.
and we get a lot of Samael. We get a number of his point of view and Grendel's point of view when they're in that shaky alliance, and he's convinced her that I'm going to be Bliss and you'd better support me. And it's great. It's great stuff.
Yeah, well, when you get bits of that, like you said with Samael, well, okay, so the main plot line was Lews Therin, Ishii, their long rivalry.
Mm-hmm.
But you get the bit with Samael. You have many rivalries. You have the bit with Samael when Rand is coming to the age of leading armies. Okay. And then you get Semirage, where he was having his mental health issues and fighting with himself the whole time. And the sadist comes in. And you get Lanfear, where he has to deal with, I'm a 21-year-old boy whose prefrontal cortex isn't even fully developed, and this seductress is,
Mm-hmm.
making me a little woody, and it's he has to go through these mental things the whole time. The big picture is Ishii Moradin, but we never got that with Demandred, which should have been there at
Yes.
some point. It should have been okay, we're like maybe right at the point where he became basically emperor of all these things. Not the last battle, but a second before it. Maybe in his dealings with the Shanshan. Maybe Demandred would have been better placed with the Shanshan.
Or just
It,
a little more of when those few times we see that little triumvirate that forms of Simir, Haj, Masana, and Demandred, just a little more focus on making it clear that the reason he is working with these two other Forsaken, even though they are also rivals, is because what matters most is I will crush Lews Therin this time.
mm-hmm.
This time I will crush him. He has no chance. Just a little more focus on the obsession
Which is
that is
why I
Demandred's
go back
downfall.
to I wish Abel was the one to have taken him down because it would have connected the Hammer story
Mhm.
from book 3, and it would have been the most humbling way for him to go. Not the best king swordsman in the world beating him,
Mhm. Mhm.
a simple farmer with a quarterstaff.
Yeah, yeah. That is one of the, kind of, as I said last time, based on that quote from Sanderson, I can see the literary mechanics of why it quote unquote had to be Lan, because this was the culmination of Lan's one man fight against the shadow. But to your point, I hadn't even thought of that. Lan is regarded by most warders as the warder.
Mm-hmm.
Lan is regarded by most borderlanders as the borderlander.
Mm-hmm.
Even the Aiel know who he is and greatly respect him.
Yeah, I mean, you could have
He
still
is
had
the
Land
Theron of this
be
stage.
the you could have had Land be the lone man against the shadow by fighting Shidar Heron, the Murdral, instead of just having him dead,
Mm,
laying there at the end as a vessel. You could have had the Dark One embodied
that would have been an
fighting Land.
interesting idea. That would have been an
Yeah.
interesting idea. Yeah.
And you could have had this, and you could have played on Demandred's character by having the simple farmer beat him.
Yeah.
And so there's multiple things going on. Yeah, you have Land's what he's supposed to be, but you have Demandred what he's supposed to be. And you could have had your cake and eat it too in that situation. Because
Yeah.
realistically, with Shidar Heron, all we got, he was just dead at the doorstep.
Yeah.
Nothing came
It's
out of that.
it was just, yeah,
Wh-
I don't
wh-
need this avatar anymore.
yeah, the lone man
Okay.
against the shadow fighting the ultimate Murdral, that would have been a great battle. And that could have been written over 5 pages. Like Galad's fight with Valda. How many
Mm-hmm.
pages of fight did we get from that? It was
Yeah.
great. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, I want to go back to a point that I brought up in one of our previous talks about the Forsaken, because I think it applies to both of these sides, Demandred and Lanfear, but of course, more importantly, what they represent, which is the um uh the masculine and the feminine evil
Versions of jealousy.
versions of jealousy.
Yeah.
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 And so this is a lengthy one, so I'm going to go ahead and share screen so you can follow along if you are watching. And this is from 1994, so way back. And um, this is a letter to someone about the Forsaken. And this is Robert Jordan quoting directly. I'm not really sure you define evil. Part of what I am writing about is just how ordinary evil is. In many ways, without the one power, the Forsaken would be no more than dark friends, though perhaps a bit more than ordinary. True, their callousness towards the pain, suffering, even death of ordinary people, and the way they submerge everything and everyone in their own quest for power and true immortality, their willingness to deliver the world to the Dark One in that quest, are shared by many who do not have their powers. The point is that they are human. They haven't gotten rid of human emotions or human weaknesses except for a few physical ones. They are not gods or even demigods, though they seek to be and think they already are. But believe me, there is nothing they will not do to achieve their goals, no price too high to pay, especially if it is paid by someone else or millions of someone else's. And Lanfear holding back and doing good for Rand's sake? Ha! She was physically, she was psychically fixed on possessing a man who never loved her. Even with that, her desire for Rand was as much a desire for power as for him. To be the one to deliver the Dragon Reborn to the service of the Shadow, that would set her above the other Forsaken. And learning that the access triangle for the two huge sangreal were still in existence, sure, she wanted his love, not least because it had been denied her. Lanfear was a woman who claimed a right to anything she wanted his devotion, but even more than his body, Lanfear wanted power. The power possibly to replace the Dark One, even to replace the Creator. For Rand's sake, not a chance. And I'll scroll up here to the first one in this because I had forgotten about this. Someone was still asking about this back in 2004. What did Lanfear do to Rand at the end of the Great Hunt when she drew the dragon's fang on his forehead? Because there had long been this thought that maybe she did something using the power to him, because and you actually see that later with Alviarin when Shidar Heron marks her to say now uh of my minions won't harm you. They'll know you're protected directly by me. And Jordan's answer is she drew the dragon fang on his forehead for exactly the reason you would think. I take that to mean you belong to me.
Hmm.
You are mine. That jealousy, that possession, that
Hmm.
you are that jealousy is you are mine, you belong to me, contrasted with Demandred's jealousy of I will destroy you.
Well, from personal experience in the dating game, if she bites you, if she bites you to the point that it bruises, she's doing the same thing, which is hot,
Uh,
by the way. But
there, there's uh a scene in Lord of Chaos where you see this in a much more normal non-evil way, which is when Perrin and Fael get to Camelin, and Perrin is excited to see Min and gives her a big old bear hug because he's a big old bear. And
Mhm.
then he smells his wife, and he has been around her enough to know what that scent of jealousy smells like. And he goes,
Yeah,
"Whoa,
he's always, it was a
I better
spike
put it
of
down."
something. What would you say?
Yeah, I can't remember how you phrase it. I don't have
Yeah,
the Lord of Chaos handy here, but
but he alludes to like thorns or something along those lines.
yes,
Yeah.
he calls it a thorny scent, I believe. And then Rand comes in and they kind of go off to the side and they're, hey, catch me up. What's going on? I met the girls that were with Viren and Alana and they told me some of this. I want to hear it from you. And he's, because he of his hearing and assent, he's kind of half listening to Min and Fail talking to each other. And he doesn't get this because he is so black and white, but also just because he doesn't understand the feminine very well. They are having this female feeling each other out process.
Hmm.
And then they realize, okay, you're with him, I'm with my guy, we're okay. All right. They strut around the yard, two strange cats, and then it's like, all right, you're not a threat to me. You're not a threat to what belongs to me, but in a much more normal and mostly healthy way. It, it does get a little toxic at times with Fail, but it is a more normal and healthy. No, this is my man. What are you doing touching him,
Hmm.
right? And then they figure it out. But it's the same again to where we started of why we use literary figures, and also Jordan's answer right there about the banality of evil, the normalness of evil, of these are normal human characteristics. It's a matter of what level do you let them get to and what do you do with them? How do you act on them?
Well, and this is an important point you just made. If anybody listening to this point says out loud they have never done anything evil, you are lying to yourself.
Mm-hmm.
We have all done something evil. We justified it at the time. You may have justifications in your head going back, but we have all done something evil. And I'll be the first to say I have. I have. And I could probably think of probably about five off the top of my head. And and I can give you reasons. I can give you good
Mm-hmm.
reasons for what I did, but it still doesn't make it right.
And back to how do you define evil? Well, that is point number 5. If you go to the interview database and click on the Lanfear tag, it's point number 5. If you want to read it for yourself, it is callousness towards the pain of others. It is using others for your ends and
Hmm.
not caring about the effects on those others. Because by golly, I need to get what I want or what I think is important. Or to your point, you can rationalize it, you can justify
Hmm.
it, but that doesn't make it right.
Yeah, well, you brought up Machiavelli and the Prince. There's a great debate in the philosophical circles of whether he was giving a guidebook or he was giving a warning.
Mm.
this is what evil people do. So protect yourself from it. Or if he was saying, this is how you have power, use this as a weapon, right? And it's a great debate right now in the circles. And actually, you talk to somebody like Robert Greene, who wrote the 48 Laws of Power, right? His was a warning. 48 Laws of Power is banned in prisons because it's so good at helping you be a powerful person. But he wrote it as a warning so you don't get used by it. Same with Art of Seduction. And it which is also banned in prisons, because they would make powerful gangsters more powerful if they read those books and followed everything that's in it. But it is there as a guidebook to not be used that way. And as you said, the difference is how do you use it? The knowledge is there. The knowledge is there, but what are you doing with it?
So to
This
that
is
point,
where intent comes in. This is
there's an
this is the hardest thing in
yes.
the rule of law is determining intent. Homicide is just you killed somebody. So that could be a wide range of things. Did you kill them in self-defense or did you kill them premeditated murder, right? Murder is a different word than homicide, and murder implies intent. And that's when you go to jail for it.
Did you kill them because through criminal recklessness or
Mhm.
carelessness? Did you kill them? Yeah. So that this is why we parse these things out because intent matters. To that point, there's an interesting little quote from Sanderson here about Lanfear farther down from A Memory of Light signing, because someone asks about when Lanfear keeps popping up with Perrin in the world of dreams, she keeps glancing up at the sky and then she'll vanish. And so this person asks, was that part of her act trying to convince Perrin that she was no longer serving the shadow, or was she genuinely afraid of being caught by him, Sanderson? Here's the thing about Lanfear. Just about everything she does has an element, a veneer of truth to it, and that greatly exaggerated, but no more than that. As you said, she's playing a different game than everyone else. And I mean everyone else. They're all playing chess and she's playing backgammon. You cannot take her actions at face value, end quote. Well, from what he said, and I brought up some of these quotes about Demandred last time about what Demandred was doing off in Shara, same thing. Is he took these prophecies of theirs about Bow the Wild, and there was a veneer of truth to everything he was saying when he said, I am Bow the Wild and I am here to fulfill these prophecies, but it's to fight the dragon who's the real enemy. No, he's your enemy.
Mhm.
He's the one you hate. And how many, as Sanderson said, annoyingly, is he was balefiring entire cities in Shara to bring them together. That this is something I hadn't really thought of until he made that point, is even with that huge army he shows up with, they should overwhelm, because if you just look at the maps that
Mhm.
Jordan drew, Shara is about the same size as Randland. So you would think their army would be about the same size. But you also have this gigantic Trolloc army plus all the Dark Friends and the
Mhm.
half the Black Tower and all that. So you would think they would completely overwhelm. Well, except how many people did Demandred kill to get that army? You have to think that what, maybe half the potential army was wiped out by Demandred in consolidating his power, if not more. And back to what is the definition of evil? He was fine with that because he had to get Lews Therin. He
Mhm.
had to have this army so he could destroy Lews Therin. There was a veneer of truth to what Demandred was doing, but how he did it and for what end, similar but different. There was a veneer of truth to what Lanfear was doing, but then what happens at the very end? Okay, now's our chance. I had wanted it to be Rand, but you're good enough. I like you too. We can form a partnership. Now, you kill him, I'll kill them, and we'll capture the Dark One. And we will impose our will and create the world in our own image. That was ultimately her end.
Mhm.
that was what she was aiming at. Any more thoughts on that? On the um boy, how would you contrast the masculine versus the feminine, the manipulation versus the authoritarian?
Well, yeah. The thing about Lanfear in that situation was she could find a reason to love Perrin there because she loves her tools. It's he became the best screwdriver in the tool belt, you know. Uh, and we all and with Demandred, the same was with the shards. Is they were a tool. How many you brought up how many he killed to bring them together? I'm thinking about how many died in the battle
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for his own personal
Now
gain.
we do see that. I haven't read the short
Mhm.
story. I'm not that interested in it. If anyone has read River of Souls, and it is more explicit, but we do see in the last battle chapter, my gosh, that the army he does bring over seems to be about wiped out.
Well, I've got the contrast here too. Uh, Matt,
Mm,
Matt on the other side. We get his point of view a lot from that battle. We get his point of view a lot from all the battles, right? How many times in each point of view in a battle do we get Matt lamenting the lives lost?
mhm,
He wants to get out of there with as little casualty as possible. Where Demandred played the old Russian playbook. What was it? Oh, if we go into this battle, we'll lose 200,000 people. And he said, well, we got 500,000. Go. Yeah.
mhm.
Yeah.
No, that was Stalin during the Greek
Hmm.
Patriotic War is, and that is why if you look at the casualty figures, they are so skewed towards the Soviet Union.
Hmm.
Yeah, it's
Yeah. And
ridiculous.
actually Matt's coming of age as a general was in book 5 when he ended up fighting Couladin. He was trying to save people everywhere he went. And he actually was trying to get away, but every time he saw people in need, he said, "Okay,
Hmm.
I can help with this." And yeah, that's the difference. You have two people
Yeah,
in the
no, that's
same
a good point.
situation. Yeah.
The core of the band was groups that had been kind of cut off or were in danger
Hmm.
during this grand, large scale battle, and he kept pulling more and more of these groups together to save them,
And I
to
think,
extricate them, to protect them.
yeah, and I think the feminine counter to Lanfear was actually Min, because how many times we get her point of view where she was like, "I could say this, but am I manipulating him?
Mm,
Do I need to say
that's
this? Is this for his
that's a
own
good
good?"
point.
You know,
Yeah.
because she would have these mental struggles in her own head of saying, "Am I doing this for me, or am I doing this for him?" And I mean, that's why I liked, we talked about it the other weekend with the different points of view that you get with Jordan, how it was so innovative. We wouldn't know that about Min if we didn't get Min point of views.
That leads me to my final point. And originally it was because this was just an interesting tidbit about Lanfear, but it also occurs to me this probably applies to Demandred too. We don't know because we don't see him as much, but so where is it? Um Yeah. So this is again about Lanfear and Perrin in the world of dreams. And someone had asked Sanderson about it, and it's not a direct quote, so it's a paraphrase. He confirmed that Lanfear's compulsion of Perrin was only in a memory of light, and that she didn't like using it,
Mm.
and so had not done so in their previous meeting back in the early
Because she
books.
thought she can use compulsion through natural means.
And we
Yeah.
actually, she says that or thinks that very early on of not liking it when she does do it to someone. I can't remember where it was, but I seem to recall. I don't know if anyone else can remember what I'm thinking of here. Of there's a moment early in the books when we first meet her, where she doesn't. She mentions not liking compulsion. Um,
I
and
think it was an interaction where she's judging Grendel.
I think it may have been,
Yeah.
yeah, which is an interesting contrast because go to our Ravin episode and we talked about how Ravin doesn't need to use compulsion. He's a Giga Chad. He is the
Yeah.
Giga Chad of two ages. He doesn't need compulsion. but he likes it.
The
He
only
he, he
hole
gets
in
off on it.
yeah, the only hole in this story that we talk about with Demandred is Demandred should have also been jealous of Robin
Hmm.
because he was a step down from Robin too.
Power wise, yeah. If you look at the power hierarchy,
Power wise,
um,
height, ability with women, all these things. The only reason Lews Therin was the target was because of Ilyena. Because remember, Demandred loved Ilyena.
I think that's why there isn't a jealousy there because he doesn't care. Demandred doesn't seem like the type that cares about having women. He wants his woman,
Mm-hmm.
which is why there's a little bit of a connection there with the woman who's leading the Sharon. And you see there's a little bit of a there and a if things had turned out differently, we could have been something. But you'll always be second to my
Mm-hmm.
goal here, which is I must destroy Luce Theron. And then maybe I can have
Well,
you.
and that fleshes out the humanity too, because that's a good human emotion,
Mm.
and he had the ability to feel that, which actually makes him a more human character, right?
Well, but I find the contrast there interesting. I hadn't really thought of it before. Is Lanfear doesn't like using compulsion because that's a crutch. No, no. I'm going to best you without having to use the power on you because I'm just that good. Same thing with Demandred. I'm
You
not
wanted to
going to
best him at the
compel you.
sword, yeah.
I'm going to defeat you or I'm going to cow you
Mm-hmm.
or impress you into following me. I don't need to compel you. I don't need to cheat. I'm not jealous of Robin because he's a cheater. He can't do it on his own. I can do it on my own with pure skill. But again, back to the point of this, the same but different because they
Mm-hmm.
have different skill sets because men and women are different. And there we've canceled ourselves again. All right. Any closing thoughts on Demandred, Lanfear, or the two of them together?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of something profound, but I think we beat all the horses. So yeah, they I'm glad we had these last two on Demandred because we had previously talked about how boring it was, but I
Mm,
think that's just because he was gone so long.
yes.
But when we talk about normal human emotion, which is again the point of these episodes, yeah, there's a lot of there. In Lanfear, we fleshed out a lot because most of us in the dating game have dealt with that woman. But but Demandred is he's the other side of it. You know,
Yeah.
he's got a little bit of sadist in him. He's Machiavellian. He is a psychopath, and yeah, he is an embodiment of how evil can happen for a very stupid reason. A little jealousy.
Here's a closing thought because the point is, real world application here, or else we're just kind of rambling and yelling at the clouds of um recognize these things in yourself and go, oof, I
Hmm.
got to be careful. Ooh, I shouldn't have done that. Ladies is, oh, that wasn't right. That was a manipulation. I need a, you know, think that through. Maybe it was egregious enough. I need to apologize for
Hmm.
it. Maybe I need to talk to my best girlfriend about what do I do about this. Guys, you're getting into the Demandred mode, or we brought him up, Ravin. Go back and listen to that. Watch out! Don't be that guy. Don't be that guy.
Yeah, but
So
also we could look at the healthy versions of it too. So I'll let you finish your thought, and then
that was what I
yeah,
was going to
yeah,
say.
okay.
Is it because it kind of just dawned on me that um Matt is good Ravin.
Mm. I thought he was good to Mandrid.
See, I was thinking Rand is good to Mandred because there
Rand is good
is
ishy.
hmm, who was it?
Well,
Was
Rand is good all the Forsaken. That's what I said. There was moments where there
that's
were
true.
because when he fought Samael, he was at the verge of being a tyrant. When he fought Semirage, he was at the verge of being a sadist or a psychopath. When he never fought Demandred. When he fought Ishi in the first time, he was on the verge of going crazy. So
I don't think it was Demandred. I think it was he was talking about Samael. There's a moment, and somebody help me if you can remember. Is it when Samael sends the um basically compelled emissary to Rand and is like, "Hey, let's have a truce here," you know? And before he says, "No truce with the shadow," I lay all these crimes at your feet. He has a loose Theron moment where all these memories come through. I think it is in that same scene where he says, "When did I ever slight you? Did I not give you your credit when it was due? Did I not give you your laurels and accolades when it was due?" That is what made me think Rand as the contrast to Demandred of Demandred can never let these things go, and Luce Theron / Rand is always willing to say, "Kudos to you, thank you, good job."
but if you're the jealous person like that, you take that as a slight, as a like you're patronizing me. So
Yes,
your
yes.
perception is reality, right? That's what everybody always says.
Mm-hmm.
It's not true because it is your reality. And Demandred's reality was he's saying this to belittle me. There is something behind the words that he's doing. So it's that actually makes it worse. It doubles the impact of how it is. And that's his own perception. That's part of where we're talking about why people do bad things is because they perceive something that was or wasn't there, and then they internally justify what they do with it. So I treated you bad because of what I thought about what you did, not about what you did. That's why the great evil people of history, they plant that in people's heads. During the Holocaust, the Jews are this because of this. They stimulated that disgust response in the population. That's what everybody's like, oh, they're forced to do it. No, they became tribal because of implications behind things that didn't exist. There was nothing different about the Jews other than their heritage,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but the propaganda machine created something. They are this. They're dirty. The ghettos, right? They're dirty. They're disease ridden. They're all this. They weren't any more dirty and disease ridden than the rest of the population, but people believed it. Demandred believed that, hey, good job on that was pat on the head, dog.
Mm. He could never get past that.
Mhm.
And I just had a thought of a contrast there of a sad one and a positive one is Gawain is mini Demandred,
Mm,
and he tries not to be, and he says, I can be in her shadow, but he is never able to actually do it, which is what leads him to his futile attempt to stop Demandred and then ultimately to his death.
mhm.
Contrast that with the mentor who tried to teach him and wasn't able to get through him. Gareth Brine is enough of a leader to know when he needs to follow, and he is confident enough in his own skills. Not only is he willing to follow, he's willing to follow a woman. First with Morgase as his queen, and then later with um Egwene as Amarillion and Sawan as his bonded Aes Sedai. And he has no problems, you know, living and performing and being his own man in the quote unquote shadow of these great women.
Well,
Doesn't bother him at all.
that's the whole point of the Warder story, period.
Mm,
Right? It is the man who knows what his job is. And in real life, sometimes that's the provider, sometimes that's the caretaker, so, all of these things. These men knew their job was to be the protector for a specific person. And that was the whole Warder story, period.
mhm.
Men knowing what their place was in the world.
Having a place
Uh-huh.
too.
Yeah, yeah.
It was also a big problem right now is even having a place.
Hmm.
So, well,
It's actually, this is how progressive these fucking books were, is because we live in a world where sometimes you make less than your wife, right? and you're
We've
in a
talked
house
about
that,
this several times.
yeah,
Yeah.
you're in a house that you can't afford, but you and your wife can afford, and maybe it's more on her, right? So you have to know what your place is in that. And almost every time in that situation, it's protector.
Mm,
When provider is taken care of, it's protector.
yeah. Yeah. Well, hopefully here in Men's Health Month, we have given you some helpful helpful hints and tidbits on how to be a a healthier man. And then also to your point, ladies, how to help your man be healthier of don't be Lanfear, be men,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know.
The manipulation is okay sometimes if it's for the greater good, but you have to really evaluate if
It
it's for the good or not.
am I yeah, you need to evaluate, am I pushing him for his sake so he
Hmm.
can be better or to get something I want? That is the contrast with Lanfear versus Min, am I in the character?
Yeah. Well, and it's a little more complicated, not to open up a new door, but because we're going to close out here, but sometimes it's okay for it if it's in your own good, as long as it's not at everybody's expense.
Yeah, back
If you
to
say, I kind of want this, so I'm going to do this, that's okay. As long
back,
as it doesn't hurt the kids, doesn't hurt the family, doesn't
yep,
hurt other people around. So,
back to RJ's definition of evil. Am I harming someone else to get what I want?
well,
No?
it's the
Okay.
old
Yes. Ooh, I
libertarian
shouldn't do that.
idea.
Mhm.
You're free to swing your fist as long as there's no face on the other end, right? Yep.
All right. Well, we will see y'all next time for who knows what. Theoretically, World War III is off the table, so we got that going for us.
Yay.
So
Good job.
maybe
Oh,
we can talk about
well, luckily
something
I'm too
else.
old to draft and my son's too young. So, oh,
Yay. All right. We will see y'all next time.
all right, later.